Hello there, thank you so much for stopping by. My name is ChitChat and welcome back to another episode of Planet Coaster, where we are working on the Chatterbox Studio theme park. Today we're going to continue working on the Banjo-Kazooie themed water ride as we work on the Spiral Mountain / Gruntilda's Lair entry. We're going to be doing some theming elements. We're going to be making a couple of things from Spiral Mountain, including Banjo's house, which is going to be a lot of fun. So as you can see, I'm already editing the track. This will be the first major themed area as you leave the show building after the loading section. So this first turn right here, that section right there is where we're going to build the Banjo-Kazooie house that you see in Spiral Mountain. And the track will then continue on around and through the drop, and it's going to transition back into the mountain and into the show building, where we will transition to one of the first levels of the game. And we're not going to be able to fit all of the levels from Banjo-Kazooie in this ride, just because that might get a little cumbersome. So I'm gonna pick some of my favorites, but I would love to hear in the comments down below what are some of your favorite levels from Banjo-Kazooie if you've played the game. This is just going to be Banjo-Kazooie, so not the Banjo and Tooie levels, even though there are some really good levels in Banjo and Tooie. This is just Banjo and Kazooie. My thoughts are that I want to feature a lot of the levels that have water as one of the primary aesthetics to kind of fit the water attraction that we're building. And so like Treasure Trove Cove would be really fun. Clanker's Cavern would be really fun. I would even love to do Freezy Peaks, just because I want to animate Boggy and Banjo-Kazooie doing their sled race. One, because I think that would be really fun, and two, it's a relatively simple thing to animate because I could just give them kind of a repeating loopable animation and just animate the sleds going, which would be relatively easy and fun to do. Plus, when I'm thinking about Clanker's Cavern, I'm seeing another video screen where I can have Clanker kind of show up and we can build a pipe structure around him, and so it looks like he's peering through like different pipes and stuff, which would be kind of fun. Plus that a fair bit of that level is underwater. So the only levels that I'm really like not super excited for and would probably exclude are like Gobby's Desert and Mad Monster Mansion, maybe even Rusty Bucket Bay, just because when I think about that one, it's very grimy, it's very industrial, and it doesn't really speak to the whimsical, fun nature that most of Banjo-Kazooie, inhabits. And I would like to incorporate something from Mumbo's Mountain just because it's the first level of the game. So maybe even before this transitions into the show, back into the show building, maybe we can have like some of the termites, just kind of around that area right before you transition into the tunnel and then into the first drop of the ride. So as you can see, we're starting to work on the Banjo-Kazooie house. Now, I looked at a couple different references for this. I was looking at the original from Banjo-Kazooie on the N64, and then I was looking at the version from Nuts and Bolts, and then also looking at the version from the Smash Brothers stage, which I really like the design that they went with for the Smash Brothers stage a lot. And when it comes to these very cartoony, very asymmetrical kind of design philosophies, it's a little bit more difficult to translate that into Planet Coaster, especially if you're using the building materials, because you're kind of stuck with this grid structure. Everything's very squared and angular and doesn't really work with that cartoony aesthetic. Now, there is ways to get around that. Like you can just go scenery pieces and just build really whatever shape you want. But if you're going to use any of the building materials, which I kind of like doing just because it gives you that texture, you're going to be stuck with this non-rotatable or non-angular where you can't really do anything funky with it like you would with scenery pieces or shape pieces. So it's kind of like a give and take. So I'm trying to find a happy medium between the art direction of the games versus the art direction of what I can build in Planet Coaster, and not spend a lot of time on because we've got so much more to build for this attraction. I don't want to get, I don't want to get lost in the details, but I certainly want to spend my time and work on parts that I think will help sell that this is Banjo-Kazooie. This is the, it might not be the art style entirely, but I see what it is and I understand what it is. So the design language still speaks to it in some way, shape, or form. But it was fun to kind of get back into this because I immediately started playing Planet Coaster again, and the first thing I did was terraforming, which is something I don't really do very often in Planet Coaster. And so I went with something that I've not really done before, but now I'm going back into the things that I've done over and over and over again. And it's funny, I struggled more with that than I did with the terraforming, because at least the terraforming was something new and I didn't feel as much pressure trying to go back to my, kind of my tool set, my internal, my mind tools, where I'm just like, okay, I know this piece and this piece work well. I know this combination of things work well. Suddenly I'm just like, oh my gosh, I forget what the names of things are because it's been forever. So it was a little bit of a learning curve or a relearning curve, but I'm pretty happy with how Banjo's house turns out. I think it's kind of fun to have these sort of exterior things that are still part of the ride. So if you're in the queue or if you're walking up to this area, you can totally see this from a distance, and then you're on the ride and you're up close to it. So it's fun to add these theming elements. Plus it helps flush out the area even more. And there's things that I want to add to the Banjo-Kazooie area of this park. I don't want to just have the ride, because normally in my mind when I'm building these things out, I think like, okay, like for example, the Power Rangers area, which I'll be going back to after I'm kind of wrapped up with the Banjo-Kazooie area. The Power Ranger area, you're going to have the main attraction, but then you have like the flat ride, that's the pterodactyl, Zord themed ride, and then there's going to be some restaurants or like Ernie's Juice Bar. So there's like things that are implemented around there that all fit thematically. So I'm trying to think like what flat ride would work really well with Banjo and Kazooie and what I could theme it after. I want to do like a little restaurant that's themed after Mumbo Jumbo. And there's just like, I want to flesh out the area even more and not just leave it to be this one attraction. So if anyone has any suggestions on what they think would be fun as like a different flat ride, or even what levels they would think would be fun to be featured in the main, ride, feel free to leave them in the comments down below. And speaking of comments, I received a couple of them from the last video. So thank you all so much for watching and leaving comments. I appreciate it. So this first one that I'm going to read is from Cardinal. Yes, good to have you back. Side note, the face should be a bit less wide and the nose should be bigger and more prominently shaped or angled. They're referring to the Gruntilda's lair face. Yeah, I tried really hard to get like those sharp angles, but I need to leave some room inside of the cave because there's going to be some scene, like a show scene in there. And also once I got it, I tried to get it like thinner, but then I was losing too much volume, and then I was just creating like, side tunnels, and it was hard to like find the balance of keeping it like enough volume in the shape of the mountain itself to keep the sides completely like mountainous and actually have something there, but also structure it so it looks more like the thinner version of the face that you actually see in the game. So I was trying to find a happy medium in the two. It's just every time I was trying to get even thinner, I would get too far and then I would just lose like that whole shape altogether. Or like I said, it would just build a tunnel through the mountain and then I'd have to just refill it again. So I'm happy with how it turned out. I might go back in again and like mess with it a little bit more just to see if I can get that more angular shape. But appreciate the comment. Thank you so much. The next one I'm going to read is from Matt MC123. Good to see you back in Planet Coaster. Thank you, Matt. A question for the next time you return to the Banjo Coaster. In the time you've been gone, Banjo-Kazooie have been added to Smash Brothers. Oh, that's serendipitous. We just talked about Smash Brothers. How do you feel about the content added with them? Character stage, music. Okay, so love the music. Getting Grant to kind of reprise the score and give it a more like Smash Brothers flair is super cool. I heard that they don't often work with outside composers, especially ones that aren't in Japan, so it was really cool that they brought him in to do the score for Banjo and Kazooie. I think along with many people when the announcement trailer dropped, I freaked out, man. I was like, wow, you know, never thought in a million years it would actually happen, and it was so cool to finally see it. So yes, definitely ecstatic. I play as Banjo-Kazooie pretty frequently. I'm not particularly good with them. I'm trying to get better. I have the same issue with Banjo-Kazooie that I do with Mega Man, where I feel like it's the moveset's very technical, so it's like there's very specific things for very specific outcomes, and you just have to really think about what you're doing when you're playing as Banjo and Kazooie. But I love them so much that I'm trying really hard to get better at playing them. The stage is really cool. I think the mechanic of it actually spiraling as you're playing is fun, but it does it gets really distracting. I have a problem with that in general with the newer Smash games. It's just that there's so much going on. I have a really hard time paying attention to what I actually should be. Back when we were still working at my office, like as in, you know, before the pandemic, we were still, you know, working at the office. During our breaks, I would bust out the N64 and we would play old school Smash. And that was just so much fun, and I have a much better time like focusing on what I'm doing because there's not a whole lot going on. But as they've evolved and more things are just thrown in there, especially the items, man, holy cow. This probably makes me sound like an old fart. It's just like when I'm playing the new one, sometimes I just kind of like my eyes glaze over and I don't even know what I'm looking at anymore. But I still love the game. I love it so much, and I'm so happy to see Banjo and Kazooie added to the game. I am looking forward to seeing what else they're gonna do. Like how are they gonna top some of the ones that they've come out with? I mentioned about Minecraft Steve dropping in the Mario Sunshine episode 1, I believe, which I've been playing with my good friend Caitlin, which, by the way, if you guys haven't watched some of the other gaming videos that I've dropped on the channel, please do. I would really appreciate it. It helps out the channel just because I can't always do these Planet Coaster episodes back to back. And I just need a break, so it's fun to play other games. So if you can check those out, I've been playing Mario Sunshine with Caitlin, which has been super duper fun. The second episode dropped yesterday. I've been playing Fall Guys, which is absolute insanity. Like, it makes my brain explode. And now I'm also playing Ristar, which is one of my favorite childhood games. So if y'all have a moment and you're willing to watch those videos, I would definitely appreciate it. It would help out the channel a lot, so thank you very much. And let's see, next comment. Quill Pen. So glad to see Planet Coaster is back. I've missed it. Random thought. How about hiding a Jinjo or two in the background as an Easter egg or to reference Banjo-Tooie? Yeah, they'll definitely be Jinjos because they were in the first game. In fact, they're like they suddenly become very, very important at the very last stage, the very last fight with Gruntilda, which I want to find a way to kind of showcase that in some way, shape, or form. Just because I think it would be really fun to show the King. Is it King Jinjo or like the Jinjonator? That's what it is, the Jinjonator. King Jinjo's in the second one. So yeah, there'll definitely be Jinjos on this ride. All right, next comment is from William221. Really nice. I'm happy to see you have Planet Coaster back. Thank you so much. Question, are there any video game themed ride adaptations you would consider for your studio park? I think that a ride very similar to the Great Movie Ride with small snippets of game series would be a cool icon to represent in your park. Yeah, that is actually a really fun idea. I loved the Great Movie Ride. Loved the Great Movie Ride so freaking much. And as sad as I was to see it go, I cannot wait to ride the Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. Hard for me to say that. I can't wait. That ride looks so fun. And I think I was talking last episode about, you know, Disney heavily screen-based attractions, and that definitely fits the category. But the way they did it, the way they executed on those screens is so freaking phenomenal. Especially, and I don't want to spoil it too much for those of you that haven't experienced it. I haven't myself. I just watch a crap ton of POV videos. And I'll even like you know, because we're not going to be able to travel anytime soon, I'll even put on my Oculus and I'll load up like a 360 video of a lot of different attractions and just like pretend I'm riding the ride. Of course, it's nowhere near like the real thing, even though you're watching a video of the real thing. You can't really, you know, get the full experience, but it's as close as we're going to get for a while. And I did one with the Mickey ride, and it was so much fun. But in regards to the idea of doing another video game themed thing in the studio park, I'm not sure if I want to go in that direction, just because in my mind I'm like picking little subsections and subgenres of things that, you know, really influenced me or I really enjoyed as a kid. So we have like this Banjo-Kazooie themed area, which is very like the video game section, right? And then we have the Power Rangers section, which is like my early childhood like television experience. And I want to try and like kind of hit little subsections and genres like that, where I'm like, okay, this was like my favorite video game, this was like my favorite movie, this is my favorite cartoon show, which people have heard me talk about. One of my all-time favorite cartoons of recent memory is Over the Garden Wall, and I really want to do a ride themed off of that just because it's so good. It's so thematically good, and I really want to do some stuff with it. So that's probably going to be at some point, that's just going to happen. It's got to. So I'm not sure if I want to focus anymore on video games after Banjo and Kazooie, just because we already got, you know, this and then the Mario Park. So I think I'm going to like transition on to other things after this, probably into the Power Rangers area and then something completely new after that. But thank you so much for your question. I really appreciate it. Taco Edom? I love the new intro. So glad you're back. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. That was fun working on that intro. I really wanted to do something catchy and really stylistic. I wanted to use some sprites and just have a lot of fun with it. The most difficult part of the intro that I ran into was doing the 3D transition with the roller coaster, because I was like, all right, I want to do all this sprite aesthetics, but I also want to have the camera rotate around this sprite object, and suddenly it's like a 3D sprite. And that was done entirely in After Effects, and it was a lot more work than I expected it to be, just because it was a lot of like simple shapes but extrusions upon those shapes, and then matching the sprites of my little character and Miko was fun. Like, it was a good challenge. So I'm glad you liked the intro. It was a lot of fun to work on. And I want to get back into animating like as much as possible for my main channel, which there's stuff happening. I don't want to like talk about it too much until it's like closer to being done, but there's definitely some animation projects in the works, which I'm excited for. So that looks like all the questions for this episode. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments on this video, this episode. So now going back to what I'm currently working on, I wanted to build some of the many collectibles that you get in the game. The notes, the jiggies. I want to like make like the eggs and the feathers and the music notes, all of that stuff. As I was building this, I realized something. Wow, this is way more complicated to make with simple shapes than it would be just making this in 3D, like using Blender or 3ds Max or Maya. And I started talking to Miss Red Nebula, who's a friend of mine, and she is a fellow Planet Coaster creator. And I was picking her brain because as I was doing this, I was like, man, I should just get back into 3D modeling and 3D animation. I went to school for it, but it wasn't what my passion was. My passion's always been 2D animation, and I just kind of let 3D kind of fall to the wayside. Plus, it was expensive to have Maya in 3ds Max. I think they've like changed their pricing structure, and it's a bit more affordable for someone who's just trying to do it for fun. But I kind of let my 3D skills get very rusty. But I was talking to her about it, about like using the Theme Maker's Toolkit and importing 3D objects. And I think I'm gonna give it a try. I think I'm gonna jump in and do some like 3D modeling and maybe remake these things in proper 3D and add an actual animation to it. Because when I was looking at, you know, all those subtle animatronics that they have for the Super Mario World, I want to see some like movement. It's so huge. Like having just, even if there's simple things, like just the turtle shells just kind of going back and forth. It's just having something moving just brings it more to life. So I really want to do that for some of the parts of this park, because like there's no way I'm going to be able to 3D model every single thing for a ride or for an area, but just doing some simple 3D work I think would really add some more character and depth to this. So I'm not gonna make any promises, but I'm gonna try. I think it would be really fun to get back into 3D, and the first thing I'll do is something simple like these music notes and the jiggies, just to get back into it, because I think that would be a fun, easy way to do that. So if I do end up doing it, I will make another video about it. Obviously, I'll probably post about it on my main channel, just because it'll be fun to, here's Chad trying to struggle with simple objects in 3D, which will be fun. I'll enjoy it. Maybe a little bit. I don't know. There's going to be the queue that runs through this section, and we're going to build a bridge that kind of goes over the drop so that people can get onto the other side. And I'm not sure how much of this drop I want to obscure. When you think about the drop in Splash Mountain, how a lot of it's obscure because the walkway actually goes up and over where the ride goes through in that final drop. I'm thinking something similar to that, where a lot of it's just kind of, you don't know how far the drop actually is, but also it's kind of fun to see the drop. You know, like one of the fun things is like you see this massive drop for a water ride and you're like, I'm going on that. And then of course they have like the splash zone on some of them where you can get, you know, splashed from the ride vehicles as they're going down at the you know, the final drop. So I'm going back and forth. I'm not sure exactly. Maybe I'll kind of combine the two thoughts together somehow, and we'll find a way to make it work. As you can see, I'm already starting on that bridge that I was just talking about. Now, could I have just done a path going up and over? Sure, but they didn't have anything that was either aesthetically what I was going for or in the exact kind of shape that I wanted it. So I'm building it, and then I'm going to try and get the paths to align to it as much as possible. It's not going to be perfect, but I think it's going to be closer than what it would have been if I just did a path going up and over, because I just don't, I didn't have as much fun with that kind of theme. So I really wanted something that was very rope bridge-y, but also was like, I like doing wider paths. I don't like doing really narrow ones, just because I think about it from like a walking aesthetic and how much more pleasing it is to have a wide space to walk in. Like, we'll go back to Disneyland's mentality, where when you go into Batuu and Galaxy's Edge, the paths are so wide compared to most other areas of the park. You're like, wow, this is what it's like to be able to walk and like actually have, you know, you could stretch out a little bit. You don't feel quite as claustrophobic. So I try to make my paths wider and only narrow when the game forces me to, like, say, for example, when you do the actual queues. So that brings us to the end of today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Thank you all for stopping by. Next week, I'm going to be jumping back into the Super Mario Park, so stick around for that. And like I mentioned before, if you want to help out the channel, check out the other videos. And as always, I will chat with you on the next episode.